And Laura, are you interviewing me on this one, or just going to throw a few things at me? And
I'm just going to ask questions.
It's very conversational style, so
Sure.
you're not going to hear her in the final video. It's more just going to be
just the nuggets from mine. Yeah.
CEOs,
One thing that came up in our interview with Farah that I would love for you to build on is the importance of having the private sector meet the kind of government's call to action. Like the importance of having associations like YPO step up and say, we're not where we want to be, but we think it's important, we're going to act on it. So that's something I'll probably add on to the end.
Sure.
Okay.
We are rolling, so I'll just give you a countdown, 3, 2, 1, and you guys can start.
Awesome. Okay, so starting with basics, so why is diversity important?
Well, diversity is important because the data's out. It speaks very powerfully to how diversity impacts profitability in businesses, improves folks' willingness to be creative, de-risks opportunities as well, and ultimately it's just right.
Love it. Is this important for governments alone, or is it important for all organizations?
Right. Diversity is absolutely an imperative that all organizations should be thinking about, whether you're in the charitable sector, nonprofit sector, or in the for-profit private sector. Governments certainly can take leadership on this and attack it from different angles than maybe private sector can, but private sector too benefits hugely from embracing it. Oops.
Whistler back here.
A whistler back there.
Whistler back here. We have that mics.
Sorry?
We have the close mic.
Yeah,
We have
yeah,
two mics going.
absolutely.
So Sunir, why should companies act now?
Well, we've all seen the movements in the last year and a bit, and if you were ahead of the curve, you saw that coming. Recognize that today is a time when there's technology that's available, when the social media is going to hound you if you don't react properly on this. And therefore the tools are there to both hold you accountable and challenge you, because what historically made it difficult to move the needle on this is no longer the case. It isn't going to be easy, but it's a journey that's important now, and that really is. It is the time, I guess, now to get behind this, and to move it in a way it hasn't moved in the last 30 years.
Why is diversity important for you?
For me personally, I mean, the inspiration came from a colleague of mine, vis-a-vis the YPO context in particular, who shared some of the experiences of women in YPO. And diversity, of course, includes more than just women, but in this particular conversation, we were talking at the time about women and some of the experiences that women were having in YPO, and how it wasn't particularly, for me at least, heartwarming to hear of these. And so challenging ourselves as an organization, and more so as leadership, to recognize the value of the diverse folks in the room, I guess, and to include them in order to ensure that we can better learn from them and be better leaders as a result of providing them a voice and providing them, opportunity to contribute meaningfully.
So what will it take for an organization to really make progress on diversity?
Well, it certainly takes commitment from the top, because this is going to be a long, hard journey. Again, diversity is not just about gender, and inclusion is not just about gender. There's a lot more to that conversation than just gender, but certainly if you look around and look at the data, there's no doubt the data suggests that it's going to be helpful to the organization. It's going to improve the organization's performance. So with that, if the leadership recognizes that and is committed to it from the top, then it'll be prepared to take the steps necessary to get there, because this is a cultural change, if you like. And some cultures, even geographically around the world, are more embracing of it than others. But even in an organization, it takes culture change to really make the diverse voice feel inclusive in the room, to feel like they are not going to be judged, to feel free to share their thoughts and to contribute. And most importantly, it was shared with us a number of months back that if one has a room of 20 folks, it's very easy for us to find the common denominator amongst us and to sort of acquiesce, I guess, or magnetize toward that. But the reality is, if we eliminate that and focus instead on exactly what is different about each other, that's where the richness is. That's where we learn the most, and that's where we benefit the most from having everyone in the room feel comfortable enough to share what's on their mind.
So Sunir,
And credit there goes to Francis Fry, if you want. 'Cause I
Yeah,
forgot to
she's
mention,
good.
yeah.
So Sunir, what is YPO? Tell me about YPO.
So YPO is an organization of CEOs, the largest organization or maybe most influential organization of CEOs in the world. We've got somewhere north of 25,000 or so CEOs from 130 countries who represent about $6 trillion in the world's economy. So it's a powerful group. What are we about? Our mantra is very simple. We're here for better leadership through lifelong learning and idea exchange. That is our mantra. What does that mean in this context? That means that we are, as leaders, committed to becoming better, committed to providing a voice for everyone in the room to be able to contribute to our own lifelong journey of learning. And therefore, idea exchange is critical to that. So if anyone feels uncomfortable exchanging their ideas or contributing their ideas to the conversation, that only erodes, I guess, the impact and the value, and most importantly, the time, the most precious asset we have that we invest in spending with each other. Sure.
So tell me about YPO.
So YPO is a global organization. Sorry, yeah. Okay, do it again, ready?
Okay.
Go for it. Okay, so YPO is a global organization. We've got about 25,000 members from 130 countries around the world. All of them are CEOs, leaders of their organizations. In total, the influence of this group is quite impactful and meaningful because we account for about $6 trillion of the world's economy. Our mantra, what binds us, is our commitment to better leadership through lifelong learning and idea exchange. And so through that commitment, we benefit from spending time with each other, from being open-minded and non-judgmental, and providing everyone a voice and an opportunity to share their experiences. And the moment that we start to judge or to muffle, I guess, the voice of those who are in the minority, we start to erode the value to the rest of us who should be benefiting, who can benefit, who do benefit from everyone's contributions in the room.
Yeah, no, it's really good.
That's great.
So is diversity a priority for YPO?
Diversity is absolutely a priority for YPO. Diversity, again, we're speaking here about two dimensions of it that are maybe topical in this day and age. One is gender diversity, and the other is more sort of, I guess, racial or other diversity broadly as well. And in YPO, amongst 130 countries around the world, they're at different stages on the journey culturally in terms of diversity within those countries themselves. Yet, as an organization, we are fully committed to diversity, to inclusion more so. We see that already in the data that we're generating from our own YPO management team, where we've got tremendous amount of contribution from women all over the world to how we operate, to supporting our organization itself. We also see it in our members themselves and their own commitment to diversity within their organizations. The time is now. I was just in Africa this week at a regional board meeting, and in Africa, which is our newest continent for YPO, but by the same token, probably the richest opportunity for us to grow in the next 20 years. Diversity was already hot on the agenda there as a topic they too are embracing and want to get behind and move the needle on in Africa.
Do you see this as a topic where your members or companies more broadly are keen to learn from one another?
Yes, there's no doubt that there are some who are better than others. And as was mentioned earlier, it's hard work. And so being committed to it from the top is great, but then learning and identifying the tools that can help us get there is even more important. And so rather than reinventing the wheel, where we can identify and share tools amongst our group of our leaders, it helps and it enables us to get there faster and also to fail fast where they're not working. And again, keep our commitment to the journey and to continuing to develop and progress, I guess, the conversation and the actual the data, the development itself.
Okay, so and feel free, you might want to do this a couple times since it's a lot, but I would love for you to tell me about the YPO pilot.
Okay. So we were approached to contribute to the G7 Women's Forum with a YPO pilot through Diversio. And that was a really unique opportunity, which kind of was actually on the back of earlier contribution by YPO to conversations between governments and to assist governments in improving the effort, I guess, and the contribution, the policy frameworks that enable women at a young age even to contribute in society so that 20, 30 years from now, we really are going to benefit tremendously from the impacts that we're already making today. And so we were approached to see if YPO, being this global network that's kind of a curated list of leaders, would have any interest in approaching its G7 countries to contribute as YPO leaders to this conversation. And it was really impressive because on a one outreach on fairly short notice, we got tremendous response, overwhelming response to contribute and also to arrive and attend at the actual conference in Toronto by the leadership teams of these organizations. And through the motions, and we've seen the first sort of cut of the data just in the last few days, we've had tremendous feedback from the employees of member companies, where certainly the leadership is committed to this conversation, but the employees have opened up and shared their own experiences. And that provides us a richness of data that actually, from my first glance, was certainly quite encouraging as well. I mean, we've got really, really good things we're doing that we should not, if not applaud ourselves for, at least recognize that we're not maybe performing as poorly as we might fear globally. And in fact, we're doing really well. And then furthermore, we've identified areas where we can even improve. And because of our commitment to this journey, I'm absolutely confident that the leaders who have been here at the Women's Forum this week and learned of other experiences from public and private sector alike are in further enthused about how they can take those back to their organizations and continue to move the needle forward so that we can just get better and better in the years ahead.
Killer. That was perfect. I'm going to coach you a little bit.
Sure, please.
But
You have a 3 p.m., right?
That's okay. It's fine.
Okay, you're good.
so I'm going to ask you, because we'd love to
Yeah.
have
Oh,
you explain like how it worked tactically. So it was basically
You're talking about the
we
actual
convened
survey?
20 companies. They each ran a survey. They each got a data set back with specific recommendations, and effectively what the technology let them do was share learnings.
Got it. And on the share learnings part, you're saying it let them share learnings when you produce the overall report, basically, or?
Yeah, so basically how it works is we asked every company, we assessed their baseline on the KPIs,
Yep.
and we also collected data on what they're currently doing. And so what we did is we correlated programs that were associated with high responses, and we basically recommended that where relevant.
But in that, did we just keep it as a closed loop of YPO, or did you actually inject in other recommendations where there maybe were ideas that were not in there already?
We did both. We triangulated. So we started with let's share learnings where applicable, but then we have our catalog
Right.
where we said, okay, well, also what is best in
Because that's the key, is I think anyways, is obviously if these are committed leaders, is tooling them up.
Yeah.
And even if they're using certain tools, if there's ones outside of that group that they weren't
Exactly.
using, then okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
Sure.
So how did the pilot tactically work?
Sure. So we had 20 member companies from the G7 countries who committed to contribute to the survey, and the survey, inquired amongst a lot of their employees about different experiences they're having with YPO. It inquired amongst their employees for different perspectives on their experiences, their journeys in the organizations. This data was then collected, accumulated, and resulted in reports back to the organizations, to the leadership of the organizations, to understand what actually exists in the weeds, I guess, of their companies, the depth and the real culture in the organizations, what the employees feel, what they're seeing. They also were provided with tools. So when they got the data, it informed them of where they were doing well and where they were perhaps underperforming against other YPO companies, and also provided them tools which were shared from YPO companies that were perhaps outperforming, but also tools outside of the tool set that the YPO companies were already using, and give them additional tools to put in their toolkit that could also further improve their performance and really alleviate, enable their success on this journey.
Killer. Anything else you want to? I guess we should. I would love for you to say something around. I'll tee you up. Can the government do this alone, or what is the role of the private sector?
Any additional thoughts you want on that one?
I just think it's important for the government to create the environment where diversity is an imperative, but it's really up to the private sector to make it happen. This can't be legislated. So, what's the role of the private sector in this whole journey?
Well, I think the data suggests private sector is a larger employer in principle than the government is anyways. And so the private sector has a huge role to play in really impacting society with this. So government can create the framework and encourage private sector, but private sector has to have a real commitment itself to this. And so understanding the value of the journey, the importance of it is something the government can assist with, but private sector has to have the will to get behind it and to move the needle on this themselves. And ultimately, private sector stands to benefit most from it, as the data has already suggested, somewhere near 15 to 30% improvement in corporate performance with diversity, with inclusion, and therefore, it just makes sense.
So here's like the clickbait, but what happens to companies that don't get it?
In this day and age, I imagine all kinds of pain. Social media certainly jumps on you. We've seen it all in recent times, even with inclusion with your clients, your customers, et cetera, the Starbucks examples and all that kind of stuff. So as a culture, you need to be inclusive in order to remain relevant, in order to continue to attract consumers, customers in. And in particular with this millennial, with the millennials here today, very tech savvy, very social media focused or enabled or capable, I guess is the best word. Bad performance spreads really quickly. And bad performance will impact your company in really negative ways. People will not want to be employed there because they're all looking for somewhere where they can align with the purpose of the organization. If there's a misalignment on purpose, they're the first ones to check out, and that, of course, is going to hurt a company long term in a huge way.
That was perfect. The only thing I'm going to get you to say is
Sure.
kind of think. So what happens to companies that don't make progress? Just because that was the only thing missing.
Let me think about it for a second, yeah. Well, I mean,
Just a statement.
are there any particular sound bites you want? I got a few ideas
Like
here.
literally just say so what happens to companies that don't get it? Like literally say that.
Oh, just say that?
And
Okay,
then we
sure.
can edit it in front of what you just said.
Okay,
so that
okay.
they
Yeah,
know
what you just said.
Got it.
But like more
Got it.
direct.
Okay.
Yes.
What happens to companies that don't progress?
Can you give me that one more time, just because there was a sound
Sure.
in the back there?
What happens to companies that don't progress, that don't embrace this?
Killer. That was perfect. Anything else?
Yeah.
Anything else you want to finish
I don't
up
know. Did
on?
I do okay there? I mumbled
you
through a
did
few
great.
things.